Welcome to a special edition of Legal AF. And back with us, of course, Skye Perryman of Democracy Forward. Great new article out in The Atlantic, Skye, by Michael Shearer, who says that you and your organization are the single largest source of Trump's legal troubles. In a article that's entitled "The Anti-Trump Strategy That Actually Works: Lawsuits, Lawsuits, Lawsuits." And you had a great observation, and the article reported that as you feared there'd be backsliding of democracy starting in 2021, and as the federal landscape changed, the levers that people could have in resistance would be limited to voting and litigation, right? 1-2 punch there. And you're certainly leading the litigation in what your organization or members of your organization have called the 1938 Berlin moment. Which side are you on? It's about fighting. It's not about blue or red. I can't think of anybody better to talk about it with our audience and brief them as to the 100 cases or so that Democracy Forward is responsible for and litigating right now. And it's a great timing for you and I to get back together again. Look at the 9 days. I'd like to say it's an epic failure for the Trump administration over the last 9 days, but I've said that before. In the last 9 days alone, Skye, you've got the Posse Comitatus Act being declared to have been violated as Donald Trump creates, in the words of a federal judge, a national or federal police force with him as the chief in violation of that act. Harvard wins to restore its $2.2 billion of federal funding, including healthcare and healthcare research funding. Federal Trade Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter gets reinstated because Donald Trump violated a 95-year-old precedent, of Supreme Court precedent. The Alien Enemies Act was declared to have been violated by a Fifth Circuit panel.
By the Fifth Circuit.
Which is totally nuts. Guatemalan children who were going to have their refugee status revoked and placed on planes at 1 o'clock in the morning without due process were gotten off those planes by 15 orders of Judge Sparkle Suknanen over the 24-hour period. This is all this week, by the way. And then it kicks off with the tariffs going down 7-4 by the federal circuit. You are a leader of the resistance, and not just because the Atlantic magazine says you are. Talk about to our audience what is happening, what you're seeing, and why litigation has been such a successful anti-Trump strategy.
You're seeing the president continue to overreach, and at the same time that they're overreaching, they're actually not committed to implementing any type of policy that's making Americans' lives easier. So the overreach would be a problem for our democracy. It would be a problem for our Constitution and for people's rights. But they're also totally missing the boat on kitchen table issues. They've not made anyone's life better. And so the combination of that has people of all political stripes, by the way, upset, confused, angry. You're seeing that in the streets. I do think I said it would be litigation, voting, and getting in the streets. People's using their voices. And the courts are holding in so many ways. And we can talk about all the stuff the administration wants the American people to believe about the courts. They wanted the American people to believe that there was no way you were going to be able to get a court order after the CASA decision, the birthright citizen decision earlier this summer, where they put on a big presser and said, the lawsuits are over. The American people are making their voices heard. And one of the ways they're making their voices heard is the ability in this country, which is a hallmark of democracies, to be able to initiate litigation against the government. And so I think that what you're seeing and what we've seen for the last 230 days or so is a flood of litigation brought by people all over the country in courts all over the country. This is not judge-shopped litigation. And you're seeing this president lose before judges he himself appointed, before Republican judges, and before Democratic judges. And you're seeing it every single day. And this week is a great example. But this is what we see almost every week in our work at Democracy Forward.
Yeah, the 6 cases that I led off this interview with, been 6 different courts, trial and appeal, from San Francisco to Boston and DC.
To the Fifth Circuit.
And the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals with a Republican appointee. Yeah, in New Orleans, exactly. So we spent a fair amount of time educating and making our audience feel a lot better knowing there are groups like Democracy Forward that are leading the charge with 100 lawsuits. We've had Rob Bonta on a number of times, the California Attorney General. His group of 23 attorney generals, Democratic attorney generals, have brought about 40 lawsuits.
Right.
Then there's other groups like the American Civil Liberties Union, which of course have brought suits, some of which you joined, some of which you're going a different way. One of the interesting inside baseball things about the article I wanted to bring forward with our audience, with you, is Donald Trump is pointing his attacks on the federal judges, liberal, leftist, Marxist, activist. But you have to have a plaintiff. You have to have a lawsuit. And the building that Democracy Forward and other groups do they see the violation, but now they've got to find a proper plaintiff with standing. Talk about how you go about constructing a lawsuit once you've observed that a violation of the Constitution, Administrative Procedures Act, or statutes has occurred.
Well, one thing we do is we plan. So much of the stuff that this administration is doing, many of the things that they're doing, they were set right out there in Project 2025. If you listen to the president's speeches, he said he was going to be a dictator on day one. I mean, those were his words, not ours. And so we listened to people, and we knew that if this administration came in and did what it said it wasn't going to do, it said it didn't know anything about Project 2025. They lied to the American people. They came right in and started implementing it. We knew which sectors were going to be affected, right? Communities are going to be affected. Parents are going to be affected. Educators, school districts, medical groups, doctors. And so we started educating people even before inauguration to say this Project 2025, these policies are harmful. They're really going to hurt you all. Have you thought about what you're going to do if these things come to pass? If the president does this, if Congress is asleep at the wheel, or worse, as they've been doing, aiding and abetting this administration, what are you going to do? And educating civil society on their rights and ability to get into court. Because a lot of people, they don't think twice about writing a letter to the editor. They'll show up at a lobby day in their state capital or in DC in the US Congress. But if you ask them to think about litigation, that's just not a place where a lot of people are comfortable. They don't think about those types of things going to court. So we and other organizations did a lot of work to build relationships and to educate people about one of the rights that they have, which is the ability to initiate litigation when and if their government violates their rights in the law. So that has really paid off. And then in many respects, our plaintiffs come from listening to people. People are really scared. And it might have seemed academic a few months ago or last year, but now the rubber is hitting the road. And so we hear from a lot of communities across the country. We see news articles, featuring local groups that are afraid of losing their federal funding or that can't take care of the people in their communities. And those groups often have legal rights, but it's hard for people to get the right lawyers to go to court. People think litigation is expensive. Democracy Forward, we represent all of our clients pro bono. And so we're able to provide that on-ramp to people, really wanting to get into court. And then, of course, other organizations do the same as well.
Yeah, it's just fascinating to see how you build a case. It's one thing for the lawyers to know that the law has been violated. It's another thing to find the perfect plaintiff to come into court. Right? I've done a fair amount of plaintiffs' work myself, and the key to the successful cases is getting past standing, getting the right plaintiffs, and those that are committed. Right. And those are passionate about, it's not just a random plaintiff, drive-by plaintiff. You need somebody who's really going to be in the trenches with you. Right.
Well, one of the things that was so beautiful, I thought, to see about the way the Atlantic covered one of our cases on the Department of Education is the reporter talked with our plaintiffs, and you referenced it. I mean, you have people that are understanding the gravity of this moment and are saying, if I wondered what I was going to do in 1938 Germany, I get to make that decision today in how I show up for my community. Those are the people that we're representing in court. And so it's really been, I think, right now in this time, people are very scared. A lot of people are searching to find hope or any type of glimmer of hope. At Democracy Forward, we see that hope in the people and the communities and the plaintiffs that we get to represent every day. And I think you heard and saw some of that in the Atlantic piece.
Yeah, during the election, when your group was so focused on the backsliding of democracy. I want to hear your view on that. There was a joke that went around that you just reminded me of about the 1938 reference, which is there's an app out there that tells you which of your friends would have been members of the Nazi Party back in the day. It's called Facebook. Right? You could just tell, and I think this is where people are starting to make their decision about which side of history they're going to be on. Talk to our audience about the quote that's in the Atlantic about backsliding that you and your organization was concerned about starting in 2021. What did you mean by that?
So in 2021, the United States was added to a list of global backsliding democracies by sort of some international and national watchdog and research organizations. It was an outlier. It was the only advanced sort of Western country that was added to that list. And while it was January 6th that led researchers to really perk their ears up and say, what is happening in the United States? It was actually not January 6th that landed the United States on the list. It was a combination of factors, a Supreme Court and other institutions that at times are reversing the rights of people as opposed to protecting the rights of people, increased election denialism, voter suppression, and extremism at the state and local level, and then the rise of misinformation and disinformation. And it cites a dysfunctional legislative branch, right? A dysfunctional legislative branch, that all of these things, when researchers looked at what had happened over the first Trump administration and then looked at what you saw on January 6th and broader trends across the country, the U.S.'s democracy was actually at risk and was in fact backsliding as opposed to stabilizing, or as we hope, moving forward here at Democracy Forward. That's the direction we want it going in. And so really a lot of the work that I came on as CEO of Democracy Forward in the summer of 2021, and a lot of the work that we've done over the past years was to build a legal institution that really was willing to look at the reality that the United States was facing in the eye and not blink. All Americans, I think, are seeing that now. But at the time, if you weren't in a state under extreme far-right leadership, or if you aren't a member of a community that had had your rights reversed by the U.S. Supreme Court, maybe it was easier to think that that everything was fine here in the United States. And so that's been a lot of our work. And so that's following and tracking the work of far-right legal organizations and other organizations. We were a group that had already tracked many of the things that were in Project 2025 when it was published. We were already tracking and saw at the state and local level, bringing cases just like you see us bringing against this administration to help communities in many of those areas. And we knew that if the federal landscape were to regress, that there would be fewer options for people available because we're in such a difficult circumstance. But the ability to initiate litigation, to make people's voices heard through litigation, to force the government to be transparent in litigation, apart from whatever the substantive issues are in the case, to hold them to account, would be a really important lever. And so that's a lot of the preparation work we did. We did it in collaboration with so many other of the legal organizations and the lawyers that you have on your call, with the AGs, with groups like the ACLU, Public Citizen. I mean, so many. It's a big community of folks that were really ready to go. And what the American people have seen in the last 200 or so days is the largest, most successful legal effort against an executive branch in United States history. Now, that's because we've got great lawyers. It's also because our executive branch violates the law every second, that it necessitates that type of response. But I think it's quite remarkable. And I think it's quite remarkable, particularly in a time where some of the big law firms are pulling back. You actually see other lawyers showing up and doing this work.
And I saw a stat from one of your newsletters that you're winning at a 93% winning clip. I mean, those are Hall of Fame numbers right there.
Well, in the first Trump administration, the percentages were very, very high overall for civil society. We seem to be on that track again with this administration because of the way they're overreaching and violating the law, as you've seen this week.
Yeah, and let's just one comment before we talk forward looking about things that are on the democracy forward calendar and therefore should be on the front part of our temporal lobe here coming up this week. 4 years ago, I mean, did you really think you'd be a large pro-democracy law firm with 130 staff members focused on being in court every day in every way against this administration, or did you have other ideas about what Democracy Forward would be doing?
Well, look, I mean, like I said, in 2021, which is when I came on as CEO, I think I came in, I think our team had pretty clear eyes about the challenges that the country was facing. And so we did quietly but aggressively scale our operations so that we could continue to scale if something like this happened. Kind of knowing that that would be a theoretical possibility or a need, and seeing and being present for its happening and leading the organization through this time obviously are two different things. We just wrapped up a 2-day staff retreat where our entire staff was in Washington. We did not move our retreat. We came, to where we need to be. And it was just a really beautiful thing to see how many people who are incredibly talented, some of the best lawyers in the country, some of the best communicators, some of the best folks, what they're choosing to do right now in this moment is to be here, to do this work, to do it against all the challenges. So we're going to keep growing. We're not getting smaller. We're going to keep growing, and we're going to keep showing up every day. And I think it was a great thing to see. We don't have a lot of opportunities to just take a step back and really celebrate our colleagues. And so we just did that over the past few days.
Yeah, that's really great. And by contrast, the Department of Justice is shrinking from an intellectual standpoint, from a moral standpoint, and just bodies and headcount.
2/3 of the federal program staff, Reuters reported a few weeks ago, have left the Department of Justice. Of course, we have been able to attract so many phenomenal lawyers that were in federal service to Democracy Forward. We have phenomenal lawyers that were at law firms at Democracy Forward. But it's really such a loss for the American people that the Department of Justice is becoming an institution where serious lawyers that, abide by their legal ethics, many of them don't feel like they can be there. And of course, we continue to want to support the lawyers that are part of the career civil service that are trying to do their best to abide by the oath they take both as lawyers and as civil servants to serve the American people. We're so grateful for them, and they're in a really difficult spot right now.
Following these cases from my side of the glass, it looks like there's 10 senior trial lawyers for the Department of Justice that appear in every case around the country. There's over 385 cases, I think 386 now. I don't know how, seriously, I don't know how they do it. And the good part is groups like yours, in collaboration with other public interest groups and the attorneys general, I think not only are you the bulwark that's protecting democracy, but you're doing a great job of doing a full court press and exhausting the Department of Justice and its resources and just whipsawing them, which is the right strategy.
It's a crisis of their own making, and we tell them this all the time in court when they say they need extra time. Well, if you're not hauling people on a plane at 1 a.m, maybe you wouldn't, maybe we wouldn't have to respond overnight. But we are committed to doing everything we can to be in court every day for the American people, and it's heartening to see that it's working. And that does not take away from the terror and the harm that so many people are feeling across the country. But we are going to do everything we can to shine a light and to stop it.
Talk about what's happening, Skye, for our audience in the coming days and hours for your organization.
Well, we've got a few decisions that we're waiting on, so just stay tuned and follow us at democracyforward.org. We of course always send it to you, to you all, so that you can highlight those. One thing that we've been seeing over the past few weeks, and I think you and I have talked about this briefly, but it's a good time with the Atlantic article to talk about it again, is that the administration is actually backing off in some of these cases. In some cases, they're changing their position in open court. They're backing off of policies. They're signing stipulated dismissals with agreements about things that they're pulling back on. They're having to make choices because of the legal offensive, because of people standing up and our brave plaintiffs saying, you're not going to take this away from the American people without having to justify it. And so I think you'll continue to see more of that. We started seeing the administration back off of various things in early 2018, the first time, which is about a year in, but we've already started seeing that around day 200. And so that's something that we're obviously tracking and moving, but we're very focused on this unfolding playbook. We know what the playbook is. It's very concerning. So there are obviously a lot of concerns around what ICE is doing in communities, around the militarization of U.S. cities, the military takeovers. So you're going to see us active, continue to be very active there. You're going to see us continue to be very active on so many of the things that the administration has been doing that may not make the headlines. They make the headlines when we sue or win a court order, but they're not in the headlines. But under the radar, they're trying to deprive people of healthcare, of education, and we're focused on that. And then we have some really important appeals coming up. We won a court order to protect the American people's data privacy, the data that you have at the Social Security Administration. We won the court order. The Supreme Court on the shadow docket stayed the court order, and we have a big argument coming up in the Fourth Circuit that one of our colleagues will make. In that case, we've got a range of other arguments coming up, including we continue to litigate on behalf of religious communities to keep ICE out of their houses of worship. It's preventing people who aren't even immigrants from being able to engage in communal worship because of the threats and intimidation. So we have a big argument in the second one of those cases, and a number of other things.
Yeah, that's terrific. And we do follow it very closely, everything Democracy Forward has. For those that are sort of coming to this late or new, there's a Democracy Forward playlist. We'll put the link in the notes here below, along with here on Legal AF, along with all of the other links that you can make contact with Democracy Forward and help them in their fight. I think this kind of discussion, Skye, puts I know from reading the comments, puts our audience's mind at ease, knowing that people like you are the good trouble, are the largest source of Trump's legal troubles, because we need that. I report on the stories sort of, as they happen, but to have somebody like you and somebody like an attorney general to come and brief our audience about what they're doing, and that your hands are firmly on the controls, and that you've got in front of you, right, like a fighter pilot, you've got that target-rich environment of the Trump administration. And the good part about the Trump administration is they telegraph all their punches, whether it was the playbook of Project 2025 page for page.
So they tell you what they're going to do.
They tell you, right.
So we just have to believe them, and we have to go confront them and be in court every single day. And for your audience, I know they follow us and keep up with everything. We're going to have a back to school briefing on Monday night. It's a virtual briefing. You can find out more on the Democracy Forward social media channels or on our website, but it'll be great. We'll have an educator, a parent. We'll have Randy Weingarten from the American Federation of Teachers. They've been a great client of ours. Some of those stories that were in that Atlantic piece that you've been that you've been alluding to, I think they can hear more about that. So we're happy to be able to provide that to folks as well.
That's great. And we'll put the link for the Atlantic article in this video as well. Skye, always a pleasure. Good luck. You got a very arduous
weekend ahead.
You got a big weekend ahead. Come back and talk to us as you win your cases. Okay.
All right. Thanks so much.
Right. Thanks all. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states. States and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.